I first became passionate about 9 transforming practices that Grace and I cover in our new book, Healing Our Broken Humanity, in the late 1990s. I was speaking at a conference in Manila in the Philippines, and I wanted to save some money. I said to my wife, "Can I stay at a backpackers hostel?" And she said, "Sure, go for your life." And I was speaking at conference sessions during the day. One morning I was woken up by the sound of sobbing beside my bed. I looked down and there was an elderly man weeping beside my bed. He turned out to be a Vietnamese man who had a remarkable story. He was a pastor who had planted a church of about a dozen people around about a decade ago, and that church had grown to tens of thousands of people. He told me stories of persecution and suffering, of love and passion. He told me how people from his church had been persecuted, had lost their lives and had disappeared. He told me about a church that was growing and vibrant, an underground church in communist Vietnam that had become a witness to Jesus Christ. But during that week I also noticed something. I noticed that all the speakers looked like me. They were all white men. Where were the voices like his? Why were they not being heard? And how do we listen to thousands and thousands of stories like his that show us what it means to be a church undergoing renewal? Now, one thing I discovered when I listened to this man is the importance of practices of justice and peace, of prayer and gospel proclamation, of hope and reconciliation. I started to wonder, how do we listen to voices like his all over the globe who show us new habits and practices that transform the world? And how do we engage in those practices today in a way that gives life to the church? This was the beginning of my journey and of the 9 practices that led Grace and I to writing the book, Healing Our Broken Humanity. After we listened together to thousands of Christians from all over the world describe the practices that renew the church and that restore a broken world to God's good intention.
When I think about our book, we have these 9 chapters, kind of all starting with the letter R, and we are giving these steps and how we can revitalize ourselves and the church and hopefully renew the church. So we have chapters on reconciliation, restoring justice, how we need to lament, how we think about community and hospitality, how we need to rethink about agency and how we can build relationships, and how we can store life together as a community and as a church.
We're living in a broken world. Families are struggling, addictions are rising, immorality is increasing, racism and sexism abound. We see shocking corruption, abuses of power, exploitation of the most weak and vulnerable. This is a world that is broken, full of conflict and pain and fear, immorality and injustice. Only God's love and power can bring healing to our broken humanity.
I think today in society we're faced with a lot of issues that can cause brokenness and woundedness in ourselves and in our communities and in the church. And there's a Korean term for that, which is Han, H-A-N, which we address in the book. There's unjust suffering, this grieving of the heart, the piercing of the heart that can destroy people, destroy families, destroy communities. So in a way, our book is trying to address some of the pain that people are experiencing, the sorrow, the unjust suffering that happens in our society.
We need another move of God in America and Australia, and in fact throughout the globe. Crusades and media campaigns can be valuable and worthwhile, but the secret to revitalizing the church and renewing the world isn't found in those. The secret to revival and renewal is practices that enable the church to truly share the love and gospel of Jesus Christ. Revival and renewal happen when Christians pursue practices that bring healing and hope to a broken world. These practices include developing a lifestyle of prayer, living as witnesses to God's love and grace, welcoming strangers into our home, being repentant and humble, living with integrity and protecting the weak and vulnerable, and loving our neighbourhoods and our neighbours and communities. This means being the kind of loving and holy and peacemaking fellowships that people want to be a part of.
So it is really a book about reimagining church, how, church has been different throughout the ages, and so we want to kind of give a new outlook on how we can be church. Church is, as Dr. King has said, the most segregated time during the week. How we can be church with people who are so different from us, racially, ethnically, age-wise, gender-wise, our orientation. How can we be church today and in the future, where we can actually bring some healing towards people who have been so broken due to the social injustices in our society, which is also present in our church. So our book is trying to reimagine church, reimagine how we can be a Christian community, the body of Christ. So we go through 9 different chapters of how we can do this. Some of them are called restoring power, agency, hospitality, lament, reconciliation, how we can live together. And so we go through each of the chapters. We share a lot of personal ideas, how our personal experiences of pain and how we've kind of worked through some of these areas of life that are very difficult. And we offer some theological reflection, some biblical work, and we try to end with some practical steps.
Now, for all of us, whether we want to become a dancer or a faithful disciple of Jesus, we need to engage in life-giving and transforming practices. The church will only see revival when it pursues transforming practices that revitalize the church and renew the world.
I have a daughter, Elizabeth, who is an example of the power of disciplines and practices. Elizabeth has been taking ballet lessons since she was 3 years old. When she turned 8, her dance became more and more serious, and she had to focus and become a disciplined dancer. She goes to ballet 4 to 7 days a week. When there are performances like the Nutcracker or Spring Dance performance, she will be at her ballet studio for 3 to 5 hours a day to warm up, stretch, rehearse, and learn new routines. It takes skill to dance, but also lots and lots of practice to become a good dancer. These practices are crucial to becoming a dancer. They have become part of her lifestyle. Her classes, routines, rehearsals, and healthy lifestyle are all practices that are essential forms of discipline needed to be a serious dancer.
What practices bring revival and renewal and heal our broken world? Practices such as repenting together, rediscovering prayer, renewing lament, relishing the Bible, restoring justice, reactivating hospitality, reconciling relationships, and more. Our churches need new, transforming practices that revitalize the church and its mission and that restore the world.
So we hope that this will be a practical book, a book that can be useful in study groups and Bible studies, and even as individuals when you are trying to bring healing to yourself, and how we can reflect on what it means to be a Christian. That is part of our task. And me as a theologian and as a minister within the Presbyterian Church, that's an ongoing question. How can we be a Christian in this broken world? How can we be church in this society that sometimes does not welcome the church? How can we be the light in this world? So we try to tackle some of these questions in the book. We share part of our lives. Some of it was difficult to share. Some are funny stories. So we hope that you will enjoy the journey in reading the book. It's a very practical book with an appendix where you can photocopy and use these worksheets so that you can all kind of work towards healing and bringing wholeness into your life, into your community, and into the church. So the book is very practical. I hope it will be useful for individuals, for communities, a good resource book for Bible study and church leaders. We're hoping that people, we don't have all the answers of how we can heal our broken humanity, but at least we offer a glimpse. Myself living here in the U.S. as an immigrant, as a Canadian and an American citizen, and my co-author Graham living in Australia. So from a very global perspective, how we can revitalize, how we can renew the church, how we can work towards healing our brokenness and our broken communities and individuals.
Grace and I hope that this book will be a practical resource for you and for your church. We hope that it will help you discover God's will for your life and for your church, as together you seek to renew the church and to heal a broken humanity. We've packed the book full of resources and tips and guidance and practices that you can engage in both individually and together. We hope that this resource will be one that will bring fresh inspiration and life and renewal both to your church, to your life, and also to your community and to your neighbourhood.